Homemade cornmeal and rice bran chum? Old school fishing? Secret fishing? 24 hours hello? Fishing fanatics? Happy new day, and welcome back to Fishing 24 Hours, your go-to channel for practical fishing tips, tricks, and stories that make every trip legendary. Ever wonder how old-timers caught buckets of fish without fancy store-bought baits, using just leftover cornbread and rice bran from the pantry? I used to think high-end baits were the only way to go, but a lesson from a seasoned angler flipped my perspective. Today, we'll uncover the old-school secret of making homemade cornmeal and rice bran chum to attract fish like crappie, bluegill, carp, and more, filling your bucket without spending a dime. This happened a few years back at a small pond in rural Missouri. I showed up with a pricey pack of store-bought bait, but after hours, my float didn't budge. Frustrated, I met Old Man Hank, a local fishing legend, with a weathered cap. He chuckled at my setup and said, "Fish around here love cornmeal and rice bran chum fermented just right. That fancy bait's nice, but it ain't always what they want. Let me show you." He grabbed a handful of his fermented chum, formed small balls, and tossed them near the pond's grassy edge. Within 5 minutes, crappie and bluegill swarmed, his float dancing wildly. I copied him, and that day I hauled home a bucket full of fish. The thrill was unreal, like tapping into my grandpa's fishing secrets. That moment showed me the power of homemade chum. In this video, we'll explore why cornmeal and rice bran chum work so well, how to make it right, how to use it to catch big fish, and tips to avoid mistakes. I've got 2 real-life stories from the US to inspire you, plus practical fishing techniques and beginner fishing tips to master this old-school method. These tricks work in ponds, lakes, rivers, or canals across America, from Missouri to the Red River, for species like crappie, bluegill, carp, catfish, and bass. So, grab a cold soda, get comfy, and let's dive into making cornmeal and rice bran chum, the old-school fishing secret. Why cornmeal and rice bran chum attracts fish? Why does chum made from cornmeal and rice bran make fish go crazy? 3 big reasons. First, fermented chum creates a rich, slightly sour aroma that hits fish right in the nose, especially crappie, bluegill, and carp, making them swarm. Second, cornmeal and rice bran are natural, familiar foods to freshwater fish, so they bite without hesitation, unlike some processed baits. Third, when fermented properly, this chum releases a scent that travels far, drawing fish from yards away, turning your spot into a fish magnet in no time. Many anglers swear by store-bought baits with strong scents, but local fish often prefer natural, homey smells. Cornmeal and rice bran chum has a nutty, sour kick that fish can't resist, outshining pricier options. The secret is fermenting it just right, mixing it properly, and casting it smartly. With this homemade fishing chum, you'll see fish gather fast, whether in a small pond or a big river. Let's jump into how to make this chum the old-school way to catch more fish. How to make cornmeal and rice bran chum. Making cornmeal and rice bran chum is easy, but needs the right steps and patience. Here's the recipe Old Man Hank taught me, guaranteed to get fish biting. You'll need simple ingredients. 1 cup of leftover cornbread or cornmeal, day-old works best. 2 to 3 cups of rice bran available at feed stores or Asian markets. A pinch of table salt and a plastic bag or airtight container for fermenting. If you don't have rice bran, wheat bran can work, but rice bran's finer texture is ideal. Here's how to make it. First, crumble the cornbread or cornmeal into a clean bowl. Mix it thoroughly with the rice bran. Add a pinch of table salt, about a teaspoon, to enhance the scent and prevent spoilage. Stir in a splash of water to make it slightly damp, but not soggy. They pack the mix tightly into a plastic bag or airtight container. Let it ferment in a cool, shaded spot away from direct sunlight for 2 to 3 days in summer, 4 to 5 days in cooler weather. When it smells rich, slightly sour, like fermented dough, it's ready. This chum can be used right away or stored a few more days for a stronger scent. To use it, toss small balls of chum as a base to attract fish schools. Then, mix the chum with main baits like mashed sweet potatoes, flour dough, or crushed boiled eggs to target bigger fish. Cast near the bottom for carp or catfish, or midwater for crappie and bluegill. Set your float so the bait sits 2 to 4 inches off the bottom for bottom feeders, or 2 to 4 feet up for midwater fish. This cornmeal and rice bran chum is cheap, easy, and crazy effective, just like the old-timers used. Using chum for freshwater fish. Cornmeal and rice bran chum works for many freshwater fish, but you need to use it right. For carp and catfish, mix chum with mashed sweet potatoes or flour dough, form small balls, and cast near the bottom. These fish love the sour, nutty scent but nibble cautiously, so wait for a full float dip or steady pull before setting the hook gently. Use a 1/16 to 1/8 ounce sinker. Set the float 2 to 4 inches from the hook, and cast near grass or roots where bottom feeders hang out. For crappie and bluegill, blend chum with steamed cornmeal, forming looser balls to create a mid-water food cloud. Cast at 2 to 4 feet deep, twitching the rod every 2 to 3 seconds to mimic moving prey. Crappie bite fast, so set the hook quickly when the float jerks, but gently to avoid breaking the line. Target shallow areas near shore with grass or lily pads where these fish feed. For catfish or bass, mix chum with fish scraps or chicken liver for extra stink. Cast near the bottom for catfish, keeping it still to let the scent spread. For bass, use near lily pads or surface weeds with a stronger 8 to 12 pound test line as they fight hard. When the float shakes or water splashes, set the hook fast. Find spots with fallen trees or shaded banks for bass fishing. This chum, as a base, paired with smelly baits, makes fish go wild. Best times and tips to boost your catch timing is key with cornmeal and rice bran chum. Carp and catfish feed heaviest early morning, from 4:30 to 7 a.m., or late afternoon from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m., scouring the bottom. Crappie and bluegill are active midday or after rain, when insects drift. Bass hunt best at dusk or night, stalking surface prey. Cloudy days or post-rain periods are ideal, as fish are less wary and more likely to bite chum. To boost your catch, scatter small chum balls before casting to draw fish in. For carp, sprinkle cornmeal or breadcrumbs near your spot. Wait 10 to 15 minutes for them to gather. For crappie, toss a bit of chum to form a food cloud mid-water. For bass, add a few minnows near weeds to stir them up. Chum lightly to avoid overfeeding. Watch for bubbles or fish shadows, then cast your bait. This turns your spot into a fish frenzy, maximizing your haul with homemade chum. Real-life story. Red River success with chum. Here's another story to show the magic of cornmeal and rice bran chum. On the Red River in Louisiana, I fished with a group using fancy store-bought baits. But that day, the fish were picky, and everyone grumbled. They're just not biting. I tried my fermented chum, formed into small balls, and tossed them near a calm bank. In just 10 minutes, I landed 3 bluegill, each near 2 pounds. The guys nearby were shocked, asking, "How's that simple stuff working so well?" I just grinned. It's basic, but done right, it beats $1,000,000 bets. That day, I added 2 carp to my bucket, feeling like an old-school fishing pro. Practical tips for making and using chum to make chum like a pro: focus on details. Use fresh, mold-free cornmeal or cornbread and fine rice bran. Ferment for 2 to 3 days in summer, 4 to 5 days in cooler weather to get that rich, sour smell without going too sharp. Mix chum with baits like sweet potatoes, flour dough, or crushed eggs, depending on the fish. Bring multiple baits, from chum to worms, to experiment. Use a sensitive rod, strong line, and responsive float, checking for wear. When casting chum, form small balls to avoid overfeeding. In moving water, mix chum with clay for stickiness. In still water, keep it looser to dissolve slowly, creating a food cloud. Test a small amount first. If fish bite, add more. If no bites after 15 minutes, adjust depth or move spots. These freshwater fishing tips make your cornmeal and rice bran chum a fish magnet every cast. Safety tips for fishing with chum. Safety matters when fishing with chum. Strong scent attracts fish but requires care. Avoid scattering chum near crumbling banks or soft ground to prevent slips. At pay lakes, check if fermented chum is allowed, as some ban it for cleanliness. Keep noise low, as crappie and bluegills spook easily. In big rivers, wear a life jacket, especially near currents. These fishing safety tips keep your trip fun and safe, letting you focus on catching fish with your homemade chum. Beginner fishing tips with chum new to fishing. Cornmeal and rice bran chum is a great start. Try a pond for crappie with chum mixed with cornmeal, cast mid-water, or a fish carp in a lake with chum and sweet potatoes near the bottom. Note where bites come like bass near weeds. Don't worry about missed sets. Practice waiting for the right dip. Using chum builds observation and patience, setting you up for big catches, perfect for beginner fishing tips. To improve, practice casting chum at the right depth, twitching for midwater fish, or pairing with lures for bass. Spend trips at ponds, lakes, or rivers timing hook sets, like dry cornbread and fine rice bran, in busy spots. Find a quiet corner to keep fish calm. These fishing techniques make you a chum master, even as a beginner. Conclusion: old school chum for big catches, cornmeal and rice bran chum, is an old school secret few share. It's cheap, easy to find, but when fermented right, it rivals any store-bought bait. 3 words: chum, scent, depth. Every time I scatter chum and watch fish swarm, floats dancing, I feel connected to the old timers. When the float dips slow, my heart races, hands grip the rod. That's a moment only anglers get. Whether you're new or a veteran, this homemade fishing chum will make you a master of any spot, filling your bucket with big fish. That's it, folks. We've covered how to make cornmeal and rice bran chum, from fermenting to casting, plus tips to avoid mistakes. I hope you're pumped to try this old school trick. Hit like, share with your fishing crew, and subscribe to Fishing 24 Hours for more killer fishing tips. Got a chum fishing story from America's waters? Drop it in the comments. I'm all ears. Light lines and big catches. See you next time.